Hi. Um, so this is really fun for me because the question is continuing to unfold and expand even as this broadcast is happening. And so really I wanted to share some experiences I've been having. I noticed a few days ago that my interactions with you are so different. When I look at the first few interactions I had with you, I would ask a question, you would give an answer, that would be it. We'd move on, la di da. And now I'm able to interact with you and be present and steady within both that question and the answer, where I can be in the question, have you give the answer, and I can receive it in a way where I can then also formulate new and more questions right in that moment. And I'm just noticing that steadiness with it. And I had a call with Kosta this morning, and I shared this story, but I'm feeling inspired to share it now, where I went to mow the lawn yesterday, which I was not looking forward to. But I decided that I was going to mow the lawn for as long as it felt satisfying, even if it was only one row of mowing the lawn. And I ended up mowing the entire lawn in less than an hour. It was so easy. And also, one other really funny thing is, these past few weeks, I've been in such a place of steady where there's been no need for me to feel this spike of excitement. It used to be something I would crave. I'd be looking like an addict for my next spike. Where's my next spike? And I just haven't even needed that or cared. And as I'm here on this call and the chat is happening, and I'm just feeling this spike of excitement, but it's at this new level of just the thrill of variety and interesting. So anyway.
That was plenty for us to start with. We know you did not formulate any particular question, but we also like to say that sometimes you speak in your mind in an environment like this where you expect steady. You expect steady so much so that reflection is not going to challenge you. In other words, these are not interactions as you sometimes have with others, where you sometimes do not know what's coming at you. And those are very beneficial. But these interactions as well, that you can have in a time of you quieting your own mind, or you having your own experience through your physical activity, or through some beautiful appreciation that you do, when you get to really expect this steadiness to be where it is right now. We will start in a place of what you have been experiencing over and over, coming through the experiences like this. Now, we're not saying this is the only thing that got you to that, because that will be too much of a credit to take. And we will like to bring to your attention is that you were finding in whatever ever you do, but in this broadcast as well, you were kind of sensing more of that steady and allowing yourself not only to get to the place of steady so you can check off the mark to get to steady. In other words, not to find just that spike to get you out of that question, but to get that spike because you are inviting the question. And there is a totally different experience. You being in a place of question, and you allowing sometimes to play ping pong with a question and a question and a question. In other words, sometimes the content impression or interactions with others will give you a little bit more of that. And you might feel that you're even stuck. You might feel that there's too much attention outwards. And then, as you say, you're looking for a better feeling thought or for a better feeling in that form of excitement and spike to get you out of that question. But what you've been sensing recently is this other part of the creation process, when your steady is so much so across that from the place of steady, you choose to open the door. You see the answer, and then you bask in that answer. And then sometimes you feel like you milk that answer, but not for too long. Not to milk it for too long, where you might feel like you try to hold on to it, because you do not want to hold on to the feeling of answer. you do not even want to hold on to the feeling of that which is an amazing, thrilling, positive emotion, because the only time you try to hold on to anything is when you feel like you cannot get there easily. But you can with all of the tools that are available to you, and those tools are consistently changing, and those tools are always going to consistently change because you are changing at all times. You found a way to know that the place of steady brings you to the next and the next and the next time for you on purpose, for you by your own determination and choice, even in the timing of choice, opening the door for the question, inviting curiosity into your experience, because it's inevitable for you in your own question answer dance to sometimes land, sometimes more often than not, on a question, or sometimes on a feeling of a problem, or sometimes on a feeling of a discomfort. In other words, or sometimes on a feeling of satisfaction and love and appreciation and all of those beautiful emotions that are coming through. We're really taking your statement into explaining more onto this other side of creation process that you've been tapping into. And like anything that you do, your attention is a muscle. Like anything you give your attention to, it requires a little bit of practice. Where your muscle of attention is going to point. Is it going to point in a question? Is it going to point in an answer? Is it going to point in a emotion that's part of the question, or the emotion that's part of the answer? Is it going to point on a tipping point in that place where you start switching from one to another? Because as we've been talking for quite often, and recently even more and more and more, it has always been, and it will always be you who is orchestrating this beautiful variety and making choices from those mirror reflections. And then you integrating that into the beautiful place of steadiness, as you do get to acknowledge that steadiness from the place of experiencing positive emotions.
Yeah, and that's like I was in the shower earlier, and I was like, oh, this is just like you mentioned, like this is such good practice and such good space to be in to continue growing. And even as I've sat through my day, I've been listening to some of the previous Weola workshops or retreats, and then also thinking on some of the discussions that were at this most recent retreat. And one of the biggest things that I received was on comparison. And like I heard it in a different way today while I was in the shower thinking about it, a more full way of how I can use the comparison of others to my benefit to just choose how I like to be. And it has nothing to... Anyway, it's really delicious how I'm like in this place of steadiness, and I'm able to look at different things from a different perspective that were not even anywhere on my radar that I could have think of.
Because we understand you might have been busy using the spike of enthusiasm and joy and fun and satisfaction to get you out of that question. But now when you see more clearly the value of the question and value of what leads you into the clarity of question, then you celebrate it. Then you are able to celebrate it more. We want to bring to your attention that even this masterclass that has just recently started as an idea is this motion forward about understanding that these broadcasts, that these interactions are more and more satisfying. It took almost a year where Kosta and Armand did not look back. They did not look back in anything that they've been doing. They were so immersed into the work of the website that Armand has, beautiful magazine, online site, and then the development of the course that Kosta is putting together, and this mutual beautiful work that we're doing together in this broadcast, that they did not even look backwards. They did not even ask for a single testimonial. They didn't even ask for a single feedback. They always knew this has value. They always knew this has value to the others. And then at some point, right around this time, maybe within the last month or so, there was this awareness about putting this outwards, putting for more people to see the benefit of it. And in order to get there, they needed to look into the place of even asking the question, is this and how much benefit this provides for others? How do these interactions and these broadcasts, how does the consistency of them, how does sometimes asking question and sometimes just listening of the question of others, how does sometimes just being in the space of knowing that everyone comes in with an expectation of being steady, how does all of that beautifully orchestrates in this beautiful place where week after week, broadcast after broadcast, there is so much steadiness that people started coming through with some major changes in their life. In other words, this whole idea, even calling it a master class, is in this place of you coming really to master a little bit more your question answer dance. It's really happening for you every moment at every single time. And so what you're catching on as well is that now this movement of all of that coming together is that you are able to reflect back on your experiences and see how this is coming together. And you have not only these broadcasts, but we're sure you have other things that you have as those pillars that keep you to remind yourself of steadiness. In other words, it is not about you getting yourself out of the question and getting to the place of answer and then saying, well, next time I'll do it on my own, because there will always be some kind of condition, some kind of tool you will be using for more of your steady. So is that this broadcast, or is this some other broadcast, or is this some other places where you interact with someone, or whatever gets you into that place of ease where you can really not only be in this wider perspective of everything that exists, or in this narrow perspective of yourself, but where you can really most consistently, with most ease, move from one to another. The dance between your focus and unfocus. The dance between sometimes discomfort and some comfort. The dance between your question and answer. The dance between your zoomed in experience from you interacting with others, being even in your physical body and mind and emotions, kind of separate from others so you can compare and measure, and then pulling back into that wider perspective where you can see that we all are one at all times. You see, that beautiful steadiness that you're experiencing means that you firstly made a decision to be steady. You firstly made a decision to find it, and while you will always be finding more and more steady experiences, these kind of interactions allow you to self-reflect and check in, if you will, on yourself, how active and how consistent your question-answer dance is.
Yeah. Thank you.